Just 1 minute ago, 5 of the Philippines' deadliest volcanoes, Taal, Mayon, Kanlaon, Bulusan, and Hibok-Hibok, were rumbling to life all at once, something no scientist has ever recorded before. Their eruptions have killed thousands in the past, but never together. Now, with 57,000 lives already disrupted and experts working around the clock, the question isn't just how this happened, but what's coming next. Taal sits quietly in the heart of Batangas, its calm lake hiding the memory of a morning in 1911 when the ground shook, steam burst skyward, and more than 1,000 lives vanished in a matter of hours. Survivors described a darkness at noon, ash so thick it blotted out the sun, and entire villages erased from the map. The official count reached 1,334 dead, but the true number may never be known. Only the church bell of Taal town remains standing, half buried in a wasteland of gray. To the east, Mayon's perfect cone is famous for its beauty, but its history is written in tragedy. The eruption of 1814 stands out as one of the deadliest in Philippine history. That year, a torrent of ash and rocks buried the town of Cagsawa, swallowing homes and lives beneath a river of debris. The bell tower, now a monument, is all that remains above ground. Around 1,000 people died that day, many caught in their homes as the sky rained fire and stone. Generations later, families still tell stories of loved ones lost and fields that never yielded a harvest again. Hibok-Hibok, on the island of Camiguin, carried a quieter threat. For years it smoldered and rumbled, sending out warnings that many ignored. In 1951, the mountain finally exploded with little warning. Ash and hot gas swept across the island, burning everything in their path. 500 people died in that eruption, and entire communities were forced to flee. The aftermath left fields ruined, water poisoned, and a population scattered. Even decades later, the scars remain in the landscape and in memory. Each of these volcanoes has shaped the land and the people around them. Their eruptions have rewritten maps, destroyed towns, and left deep marks on the Filipino imagination. When the names Taal, Mayon, or Hibok-Hibok are spoken, they are never just places on a map. They are reminders of mornings when the world changed in an instant, and of the thin line between daily life and disaster. The fear that rises today is born from these histories, as old wounds ache at the first sign of new unrest. April 8, 2025. Before sunrise, monitors at the PHIVOLCS command center flickered with a surge of seismic alerts. At 6:47 a.m., Kanlaon erupted without warning. A column of ash shot 4 kilometers into the sky, darkening the morning over Negros. Pyroclastic flows tumbled 2 kilometers down the volcano's slopes, forcing officials to redraw evacuation zones in real time. Within minutes, aviation warnings rerouted flights, and local authorities began moving families out of high-risk areas. By midday, the command center was running on emergency protocols. Seismologists, volcanologists, and duty officers rotated in 12-hour shifts, with barely enough staff to keep up. The crisis wasn't limited to one island. Bulusan, nearly 400 kilometers away, began to rumble. On April 27th, its sensors recorded 53 volcanic earthquakes, then 86 more by the next day, the highest count of the year. At 3:54 a.m. on April 28th, Bulusan sent its own ash plume 4.5 kilometers high, dusting nearby towns and sending health advisories across Sorsogon. Throughout April, the PHIVOLCS team coordinated across 3 regions, updating risk maps as new data flooded in from remote sensors and field reports. The duty seismologist, whose name remains off the record, flagged simultaneous tremor spikes at multiple volcanoes at 4:22 a.m. on April 2nd. This triggered the first inter-island alert in the agency's history. Emergency text alerts went out to local governments, warning them to prepare for possible evacuations. The numbers grew fast. In Negros, More than 28,000 people left their homes as ash drifted over fields and water sources. Sorsogon's barangays emptied as sulfur gas and falling ash made the air unbreathable. By the end of the month, over 57,000 people were affected nationwide, with nearly 4,000 forced into evacuation centers. School closures rippled through the islands, and relief convoys struggled to reach cut-off communities. Inside the command center, exhaustion set in. Operators juggled outdated equipment, triaged calls from mayors demanding updates, and tried to make sense of overlapping crises. The usual routine, monitor, report, advise, was replaced by a scramble to keep pace with events that were breaking every pattern in the book. For the first time, the threat didn't come from a single mountain, but from a network of volcanoes waking up together. The scale of the emergency was unlike anything the country's disaster response teams had faced before. A mother sits on a folding chair in a crowded school gym, her youngest child curled up beside her on a thin mat. The air smells of disinfectant and sweat, and the noise never quite fades. Babies crying, radios crackling, anxious voices drifting through the open doors. She keeps her family's few belongings close, packed in a plastic bag. 2 shirts for each child, a blanket, a battered phone. Every night, her daughter wakes from dreams of ash falling through the roof, calling for her father, who stayed behind to guard their home. Sleep comes in short bursts, broken by the memory of sirens and the rush to leave before sunrise. Children line up for water at dawn, shuffling in slippers too big for their feet. School is closed, but the lessons continue in strange ways. They draw pictures of mountains and dark clouds, sometimes adding stick figures with masks over their faces. Some children refuse to leave their mother's sides, clinging tightly whenever the ground vibrates or a loudspeaker blares a new warning. Teachers, now volunteers, try to distract them with games, but the older kids trade stories about past eruptions, how their grandparents lost homes to fire and mud, how the river once ran black with ash. In the evenings, the mother listens for updates on her phone, hoping for news that it's safe to return. She counts the days since her family last slept under their own roof. Each night in the evacuation center feels longer than the last, as the uncertainty settles in deeper than the dust. For these families, the disaster is not just outside the walls, but inside their dreams, shaping a new kind of fear that lingers, even when the sky is clear. In the lowlands of Negros and Sorsogon, the fallout from volcanic ash is measured not just in centimeters, but in pesos lost and futures put on hold. On the day after Kanlaon's eruption, rice paddies and coconut groves lay buried beneath gray dust, their crops unsellable. The Regional Agriculture Board tallied losses at over $3.07 million, a number that grew as fields remained unworkable and irrigation canals clogged with grit. For many farmers, the destruction was immediate. Harvest-ready rice spoiled overnight, and coconut trees that survived the ash still faced months of stunted growth. Local cooperatives tried to adapt. At the main farmers' meeting hall, the co-op leader called for patience as buyers from Bacolod and Cebu canceled shipments, citing contaminated produce and closed roads. Trucks that once carried fresh vegetables and fruit now sat idle, their contracts suspended indefinitely. Markets in the city reported price spikes, but the rural barangays saw only empty stalls and dwindling cash. With formal trade frozen, some communities pooled what was left, organizing informal swaps of rice, eggs, and fish between neighbors. Cash became scarce, and families relied on relief goods as a stopgap, waiting for word on when it might be safe and profitable to return to their fields. Farmers pressed local officials for accurate forecasts, hoping to salvage what they could before the next ashfall. Each day without clear guidance meant another day lost, another debt unpaid. The economic shock rippled outward, touching transport workers, vendors, and small shop owners whose livelihoods depended on the steady rhythm of planting and harvest. For these communities, the crisis was not only a test of endurance, but a reminder of how closely their fortunes are tied to the moods of the mountains. Across the world, volcanologists stared at the data coming out of the Philippines in disbelief. 5 volcanoes, each hundreds of kilometers apart, were sending up plumes, shaking the ground, or rumbling with ominous tremors, all within the same month. The pattern seemed to defy what science had always taught about volcanic systems, that each mountain is an island beneath the earth, fed by its own magma, isolated from its neighbors. But new evidence complicated the picture. Magnetotelluric surveys, conducted between 2023 and 2025, picked up faint electrical anomalies in the crust beneath Negros and Bicol. Some Filipino scientists began to wonder if ancient, half-forgotten corridors might still exist far below, linking volcanoes like Kanlaon and Bulusan in ways never seen before. The idea was simple, almost elegant. If a disturbance shook one volcano, pressure could ripple through these hidden pathways, setting off a chain reaction along the arc. The theory spread quickly, fueled by the timing of the eruptions and the sheer scale of the crisis. International experts joined the debate. Dr. Anja Richter, a German volcanologist with decades of experience in arc volcanoes, flew in to work alongside the PHIVOLCS team. She pored over the magnetotelluric data, searching for patterns in the anomalies. The signals were real, she agreed, but their meaning was far from clear. An anomaly is not a tunnel, she cautioned. It could be old, filled with cooled rock, or simply a pocket of groundwater. Other lines of evidence pointed in the opposite direction. Deep seismic tomography, essentially a CT scan of the Earth, showed each volcano with its own distinct low-velocity zone, a signature of isolated magma chambers. Isotope analysis on volcanic gases told the same story. The strontium and neodymium ratios at Kanlaon, Mayon, and Taal did not match, suggesting each drew from a separate source. Even the carbon dioxide and sulfur dioxide emissions, measured in real time by mobile labs, varied sharply from one volcano to the next. Still, a nagging question refused to go away. If these volcanoes were truly unconnected, why did their unrest begin so close together in time? The synchronization of tremors and eruptions remained unexplained by the standard models. For every piece of evidence supporting isolation, there was an uncomfortable gap in understanding. Dr. Richter put it plainly. The only certainty is uncertainty. We are watching something we do not yet fully understand. As the debate continued, the crisis on the ground deepened. Scientists could not agree on the cause, but they all agreed on one thing. The risk was real, and the answers were coming too slowly for those living in the shadow of the mountains. On January 11, 2025, a magnitude 7.4 earthquake struck off the coast of Mindanao. The shock waves rippled outward, shaking buildings as far as northern Luzon and sending residents scrambling from their homes. Within 36 hours, scientists at PHIVOLCS noticed something strange. Across the archipelago, volcanic sensors began picking up subtle changes. Gas emissions surged at Kanlaon, Bulusan, and Mayon. Taal's seismic network recorded a sudden cluster of micro-earthquakes, and PHIVOLCS instruments showed a brief spike in ground tremor. The timing was too close to ignore. The idea took hold that the Mindanao quake might have set off a chain reaction, not by direct connection, but by shifting the stress deep in the Earth's crust. In theory, a massive tectonic event can jolt magma systems, unclogging blocked vents or nudging pressurized chambers closer to eruption. For days after the quake, real-time data showed sulfur dioxide and carbon dioxide levels climbing at multiple volcanoes. At Kanlaon, sulfur dioxide emissions more than doubled compared to the week before. Bulusan's seismicity, already elevated, jumped again, with dozens of volcanic earthquakes logged each day. Even Mayon, usually quiet in January, showed a brief uptick in degassing. Scientists scrambled to model the stress transfer. Coulomb stress calculations suggested that while the main shock's energy faded quickly with distance, even a small nudge could disturb a system already on edge. Yet the distances involved, hundreds of kilometers between Mindanao and the central volcanoes, made a direct causal link hard to prove. Most known cases of quake-triggered eruptions happen within 50 kilometers of the fault rupture, not across entire island chains. Still, the sequence of events was hard to dismiss. The Mindanao quake, followed by synchronized unrest at 5 volcanoes, challenged the standard playbook. Some researchers pointed to the timing of gas spikes and tremor clusters as circumstantial evidence. Others warned against reading too much into coincidence, noting that Philippine volcanoes often act up during the dry season, when groundwater levels change and magmatic pressure builds. For now, the Mindanao quake remained a prime suspect, a possible catalyst, but with no confession. The question lingered. Was this a rare case of nature's dominoes falling, or a coincidence waiting for a better explanation? On May 9, 2025, a closed-door meeting at the Department of Tourism brought together regional officials, lobbyists, and government advisors. The agenda was clear: keep the summer travel season alive, no matter what the volcanoes were doing. In the meeting minutes, later leaked to the press, a tourism official from Bicol argued that evacuation orders would devastate local businesses and send the wrong message to international partners. Her voice carried weight. Tourism had just begun to recover from years of pandemic losses, and the region's hotels and resorts were already facing a wave of cancellations. That same week, a confidential eruption risk forecast for 2026 landed on a senior official's desk. The document, stamped "for internal use only," warned that the odds of at least 2 major eruptions in the coming year were the highest in decades. Instead of releasing the findings, the forecast was shelved. Staffers were told to soften public advisories and avoid language that might spark panic or hurt bookings. PHIVOLCS scientists, who had spent months compiling the data, watched their recommendations get diluted by layers of bureaucracy and political calculation. Meanwhile, procurement delays from earlier budget hearings came back to haunt the response teams. Requests for new broadband seismometers and satellite uplinks had stalled in Congress, caught in debates over debt ceilings and competing priorities. As the crisis deepened, PHIVOLCS was forced to rely on aging equipment, with some monitoring stations running on backup batteries and patchy internet. Field teams reported gaps in seismic coverage, especially in remote barangays, where new sensors had been promised but never delivered. Social media became a battleground. On TikTok, a video showing a fake lava flow near Mayon racked up 2 million views in a day. Facebook groups spread rumors of a super eruption conspiracy, blaming authorities for hiding the truth. Hashtags like #BusinessAsUsual and #VolcanoHoax trended alongside footage of real ashfall and evacuation lines. The result was confusion. Some residents ignored evacuation orders, convinced the crisis was exaggerated, while others panicked and fled at the first sign of tremor. PHIVOLCS hotlines saw a 60% surge in calls, overwhelming staff already stretched thin. In the middle of the chaos, the tourism official returned to her office, fielding calls from hotel owners desperate for reassurance. Her public statements urged calm and promised that the region was open for business. Behind the scenes, she pushed for more optimistic messaging, even as fresh advisories arrived from the scientists. The gap between official optimism and on-the-ground reality widened with each passing day, leaving families, farmers, and local leaders to navigate a crisis where facts and rumors collided at every turn. In April 2025, for the first time in Philippine history, 5 major volcanoes, Taal, Mayon, Kanlaon, Bulusan, and Hibok-Hibok, entered periods of simultaneous unrest, affecting over 57,000 people and displacing nearly 4,000. Historical records show these volcanoes have caused thousands of deaths in previous eruptions, underscoring the stakes behind every alert. Scientists documented a possible link through underground magma pathways, but tomography scans revealed isolated chambers, leaving the cause of this synchronized activity unclear. A magnitude 7.4 earthquake in early 2025 coincided with the onset, but no definitive trigger has been confirmed. Political debates, resource shortages, and mixed public messaging further complicated the crisis. As of now, the underlying reasons for this unprecedented volcanic awakening remain unresolved, and key forecast documents remain classified. The Philippines faces ongoing risk, with the lessons of 2025 highlighting the urgent need for transparent science and preparedness as the region awaits what comes next.